So instead of just having these dead set metrics, we really just started focusing on our sphere of influence. How can we build that in a productive and a healthy way? And then we start learning, how do you compete in today's market?
Welcome to the Raquel Show. This podcast is for entrepreneurs who love to play bigger in business and in life. And today I have a very special guest who I met in a mastermind and got connected through our mentor. He's a speaker, a best-selling author who's published 4 books. Yes, 4. Real estate investor who recently sold a package of 13 homes and bought 50 doors on his own. And a leader who currently leads 19 productive agents. He's best known for helping sales professionals quickly scale to 6 figures in their first year. And he also helps people master negotiations. And in business or in this market, if you're a real estate agent, who doesn't need that right now? Welcome to the show, Luke Andrews.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited and I've waited for this interview. I want to dive into it really quickly.
Sure.
What inspired you being a real estate entrepreneur and agent? What inspired you to get into real estate? And how did you get to where you're at today?
Well, actually, my path is probably a little less traditional. I come from a corporate background. So my background is actually strategic marketing and data analytics. And my wife was very interested in real estate. We were both born and raised here in Kentucky. We lived in Denver for 10 years and then came back to Kentucky almost 8 years ago. As we came back, she was looking to make a change, wanted to get into real estate. And I connected her with a great friend of mine who I've known since I was a kid. And she came in selling and just lighting the world on fire. I was working my corporate 9 to 5. And she said, hey, it would be so great if you were licensed, if just on your way home in the evenings, coming back from downtown, you could just stop and show these houses at 5 o'clock and I wouldn't have to do it. So she convinced me to get my license just to be a part-time agent. And I fell in love with it so quickly. It really helped with my investor business. And then I found that she and I really enjoyed working together. And after a very short time, I decided I don't want to be stuck in this corporate rat race any longer. And I made the jump and came over to real estate full time. And since then have been growing a team and it's been amazing.
Number one, I actually want to ask this question because I know that there are a lot of entrepreneurs listening saying, what's the secret to working with your significant other in a business?
I think the secret is knowing that you each have different strengths. And hopefully to be able to play off of those, to allow each person to do what they do best, to find time to not talk about work, but to also realize that sometimes you have to have some arguments and that's okay. And that's healthy. Just like in any relationship or marriage, there are going to be arguments, there are going to be disagreements. And it's that way in business as well. You just have to make sure that you don't let it get too out of hand.
Oh, love the secret to working with your significant other. And I agree with you. Having arguments in a healthy way is healthy, right?
Sure.
As long as you don't let it run too much. Okay. So you guys have built, it was you and her, and you guys now have a team of 19 agents.
And she has stepped out for the most part. She does very little production. And that's a choice that she decided that, she wanted to step away a little bit and help me more on the backside. Not really a transaction coordinator, but just really helping on the administrative side of it. She still does a little bit of production, but it's not anywhere near as much. She found that she did not enjoy the leadership as much as I did.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You guys have a team of 19 people. How did you guys build to 19? A lot of times, when agents are building, maybe at 2 or 3, they're like, I don't know if this team thing is for me.
Well, I am very, very grateful and fortunate that I have an amazing mentor in the real estate space. As I told you, one of my close friends, we came into the business with him. he was in a phase to where he was looking at bringing on new agents. And as he was bringing on agents, his team was starting to grow, and he realized that he didn't have enough time to dedicate to give them exactly what they needed to get them off the ground. And so we created these leadership positions. They were almost like sales managers. So I've got myself, and then I have a counterpart. But through that, we really just started recruiting and building and growing, where we've got my real estate mentor, Jay, who has led the way and paved the way and shown us the great path. We have just started to grow and to grow and to grow. And now myself and my counterpart, we realized we didn't have enough time in the day. So now we have some sales managers underneath us who kind of take some of that initial triage, some of the initial training to be able to help so that we can focus on higher level activities like recruiting, generating leads, and then dealing with some of the more complicated issues, challenges, questions.
I love that. Love that. So when it comes to recruiting, because there's a lot of people that will hire people underneath them or like side by side with them as far as sales manager, and a lot of people get nervous about recruiting. What is it that you look for when it comes to recruiting somebody on your team?
I'm looking for somebody who is a problem solver, someone who has a willingness to solve problems. I think in the past, we used to look for people who were just absolute problem solvers, but now I hate to say to sound like this old crotchety person who's like, these young kids these days, but even if there's just a willingness to solve problems, they're so far ahead. And then we look at how connected they are with the community or how much they desire to be connected. Because we've had a lot of success with people moving in from out of town who don't have a great sphere of influence. But if they've got that willingness to solve problems, if they're going to be a self-starter, and they're going to be someone who is coachable, I mean, that's huge. If they're not going to be coachable, if they're not going to take the feedback and they're not going to take the advice of someone who's been there and who has done it successfully, it's probably not going to be a good place for them.
You and your partner are obviously doing something right because you have built this team to 19. For those that are listening that want to build a team or that haven't had the success of building a team to 19 people, if you could go back, what advice would you give them?
It's hire as many of the right people as you can and none of the wrong ones. And obviously a few wrong ones are going to slip through, but we tried this approach of, okay, we want this number of people. And sometimes that number was really aggressive and high. And so we were just recruiting, bringing on, and then realized we were just doing it to achieve a number. And so we brought in a lot of the wrong folks. But then there were other times where we would swing the complete opposite direction. And then we'd put such a pause on it that we let a few good ones slip out the door. But I think if you just have that mindset of always looking for people and finding as many of the right ones, but none of the wrong ones, knowing that a few bad ones are going to slip through. And there's going to be a few as well that you're willing to take a flyer on that end up surprising you that turn out to be really great.
Do you have any metrics when it comes to building a team of knowing at like maybe a 30-day mark or 90-day mark? When do you know that you've hired a good one?
I don't know that there's necessarily a mark. We tried that approach for a little while as well. We tried to be uber strategic. We're very much about the numbers and the metrics. And we tried to take that into our recruiting and our onboarding. And it was just like, okay, everybody's going to go through this very similar plan because we knew we needed that for scale. But we also realized that everybody came in with different skill sets. And then also people had different goals. If we're trying to fit an agent who wants to do 20 to 25 deals a year into a process that we're trying to push them to do 40 or 45, it doesn't work for either one of us. So instead of just having these dead set metrics, we really just started focusing on, for me especially, it's three key areas. And just helping them build. And we start with just working on their sphere of influence. How can we build that in a productive and a healthy way? And then we start learning, how do you compete in today's market? What can I show you to do for there? And then finally, we try to round out their business with an investor perspective, because we know investors are it is a great way to have a skill set that not a lot of agents have in this market. So it makes you more valuable, more marketable. And then investors are also, those are just the kind of the quick hit, easier deals that will keep you fed when things get slow. And then God forbid we do have a market correction, hopefully it will allow us to have some inventory easing a little bit. But if we have a big market correction, it's the investors who are really going to drive sales at that point. And we want to make sure that we're poised and set up to withstand any major issues that we have.
Love it. Where are you guys located right now for those that are listening? Because if somebody wants to invest in your market, it's something that you guys focus on as a team. I want to hear about your average price point.
Sure. So we're in Louisville, Kentucky. We sit right on the river, right on the border of Indiana. Average price point from a single family home perspective is almost $250,000, which is incredibly low compared to most I know. From an investor standpoint, it's gotten a little tougher over the last couple of years, but we still have some pockets of really good rentals that you can pick up in the low six figures, so the low hundreds, that are still going to rent for somewhere between $900 and $1,200 a month.
What I love what you do with your team is you give them different perspectives of the business, including the investment space. And one of the things you do is help people or agents scale to six figures. What would you are like maybe one or two key points in how you guys do that as a team?
So as I talked about building the sphere, I try to get them to think about leads a little bit differently in what I call realtor math. The way the market is going right now, we're moving away from these traditional pay-for-play lead sources, where it's just you pay your $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month, and Zillow or Realtor or Opcity, whoever just sends you a certain number of leads. We're moving into that referral fee model. And I've had several agents who have given us a lot of pushback on that. They look at that 35% off the top and they say, well, hey, I've got a $400,000 buyer here, but if I have to give 35% to Zillow or Opcity off the top, they start doing the math in their head and they're like, okay, 400,000, 3%, that's 12,000. I got to lose 35%. And then I have splits and everything else. I've questioned them a little bit and tried to get them to look at that and say, hey, I think you're being a little short-sighted here. I think you're looking at this the wrong way. That what if I were to come to you and say, hey, I've got a $260,000 buyer lead here with no referral fee. They're going to jump on that every single time. They're shying away from these leads with the referral fees, but they're jumping on something it's exactly the same at the end of the day. When you do the math, you take 35% off 400,000, you get to 260. But the key difference that we have, and what I'm trying to help them see down the road, that the average agent's not seeing, and that's why, 90% of agents are gone after their first year and 95% after 3 years. Mm-hmm. They don't make it to the time that their sphere starts turning over. So you sell somebody a house 3, 5, 7 years down the road, they sell and they buy again. Well, you may take that 400,000, you may pay a referral fee today, but in 5 years, they're now selling that $400,000 house, and then they're moving up to a 6 or a 700,000. And at that point, that's your sphere. You're not paying a referral fee on that. So you're planting the seeds today in order to be able to reap those rewards down the road. In addition, people who live in $400,000 houses tend to hang out with other people who live in $400,000 houses. So that's who their sphere is, who their referrals are going to come from, which again, you're not going to have to pay that 35% on. So again, I think they're doing the math. They're just doing the wrong math.
Such a good point. You play for longer opportunity. You see the opportunity today to play for a longer return on a client because there's future properties. Even when you're interviewing agents, sometimes they can look at like even a split conversation and only think about the split or the referral fee. But really, like if you get 100% at some other brokerage or some other place, but there is no opportunity and there's no leads, it's still 100% of nothing.
Exactly. And that actually reminds me of what I was going to say is taking all of these leads in the beginning, you're just sharpening your skills every single deal that you do. Because I'd argue that in real estate, in mortgage, in insurance, any of these sales-based business, that experience is measured in transactions and not in years. Correct. I mean, anybody who's been in the real estate business less than 15 years, we've all been in the same market. We've all been on this high. Nobody's seen the ups and the downs. They've only seen one market. So somebody who may have been in the business for 3 years, but is only doing 6 deals a year, they've got 18 transactions worth of experience, as opposed to another one of my agents who is 12 months in and has done 36 deals. I'd venture to say that they have double the experience of this other agent. Just because you've been in it for 3 years doesn't mean that you have 3 years worth of knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a good point. Speaking of your agent that does 36 transactions, what would you say on the flip side stops people from succeeding in this business?
I think turning their back on opportunities they deem aren't worth their time. I have another agent who has done a tremendous number of transactions, who was willing to really just take the junk. Okay, the $18,000 mobile homes and the $25,000 teardowns and all of those deals, and he was getting those from a lead source that he was having to pay a referral fee. So I mean, he was getting next to nothing, but it was building this massive skill set. And then he started realizing that a lot of the people he was dealing with were investors who were buying more and more, and the transactions got easier and easier. And then when they came to him and said, "Oh, hey, by the way, I really appreciate how you handled these five $30,000 properties for me. I have my $800,000 home that I need you to help me sell and then help me buy at 1.2 million." It makes a lot of sense, but he put in the work. He paid his dues, when I've had a lot of other agents who have just said that that's beneath them.
Oh, yes. I remember the REO days where we would sell properties for $18,000 and we were lucky if we got $500 in commission, right?
Yeah.
But you said the point exactly. A lot of those people were investors or my wholesalers, and that's how we're connected today to help other people that want to come into our market and connect, because those relationships mean a lot, but you have to be willing and be open to do the work.
Yeah.
So with this high turnover in this business, because you're in the business where they don't even make it maybe 3 years, what would you say would be the biggest thing that holds them back?
Biggest thing that holds them back, they just get in their own way. They make excuses for everything. It's someone who sits down to prospect. They may have an hour dedicated to it, but they'll spend the first 30 minutes trying to organize their list and make sure that their headset is just perfect and that their desk is organized the way that it should be. And they have their spreadsheet out and their notebook and their pens and they've got their coffee and everything else. And before you know it, half of your prospecting time is done. And what you realize is they didn't really need all of that to get anything accomplished. They were just delaying because they were afraid to pick up the phone and make a phone call. Mm-hmm. And we focus a lot on that, on helping agents have difficult conversations, giving them tips and tricks to get them over that hump. Because if you can have the difficult conversations in this market, those are the agents that win.
Yeah. And one of the things that you do is you help people with negotiations, especially in markets across the country where inventory is low and you have to have those difficult expectations or conversations. What would you say are maybe some key things when it comes to negotiations? Because let's face it, with great negotiations come sales, and sales are the key factor to driving revenue in a business.
So I have tried to keep it insanely simple. Our shared mentor, Sharon, he likes to work in threes. I also like to work in threes. As I told you before we came on the call, my background's in strategic marketing and data analytics. And so I had the pleasure of being able to spend a corporation's money to do a lot of market research and build these avatars and build these client profiles. And what we found is over 40% of the people that we were working with fell into this group that we called simplicity seeking followers, meaning that if we asked them to do something in a marketing piece and we gave them more than 3 steps, they just weren't going to do it. It doesn't matter what the result was. They weren't getting over that hump. So I've started kind of working in that base of 3. And so I created there are 3 P's of negotiation. And it starts with just being prepared. And it doesn't mean having every piece of knowledge at the forefront of your mind, right at your fingertips. But I mean, just being prepared for objections that could potentially come up, knowing your market, knowing your listings, knowing your clients, exactly what they're looking for. being able to anticipate some of those needs, some of those questions that come up. So starting with being prepared, and then we move into a posture state of mind, because we know that 92% of communication is nonverbal, at least not the words that you say. It's tone, it's pitch, it's body language, it's all of those things. So by standing up straight, looking people in the eyes, you're showing that you're in control of a conversation, in control of a negotiation. It gives you that opportunity. It gives you that confidence, which in turn, is driven by competence. But I would say it goes the other way as well, that your competence is also driven by your confidence. So after you've got the prepared, after you've got the posture, then I go into project. We have this tendency that when we get in these difficult conversations that we mumble, or our voice starts to crack. And so I found that if you talk just a little bit louder than you feel like you need to, it forces any of that through. So it causes you to be very direct. It causes other people to listen. It shows that you're in control of the conversation, but your voice isn't cracking at that point. I actually learned this. It's a very relevant story for me right now, the way that I came up with this. So I have a 6th grade son who had to do a class presentation recently and was not prepared even a little bit. Got up and he was looking all around, couldn't maintain eye contact. And just fumbling. He just was not prepared. So much so that the teacher finally said, "You just need to go sit down. I'll decide later if I give you another opportunity for even partial credit." And it brought me back to a time when I was actually in 6th grade giving a presentation on Michael Jordan, who at the time was my favorite person on the planet. And I knew everything there was to know about Michael Jordan. And so I did not need to prepare for this presentation because I could get up and I could just wing it. And I got up and I was so nervous that it was the first time that I ever remember like my cheeks getting flushed. Like it was so hot on my face. I knew that I was mumbling. There was even a kid in the front row who just looked at me and said, "You are an idiot." Because the few things that they could understand that I was saying were wrong and incorrect. But I vowed at that point that I would never be unprepared again, that I would never go into a presentation again without knowing exactly what I needed to do in order to be able to just absolutely nail it. I probably should have relayed that lesson to my son long before he got up to do his presentation. And I thought, I've dropped hints and nuggets, and like any 12-year-old boy, he doesn't want to listen to his dad about anything. But I think he's finally learned his lesson and realized like, okay, I need to take this a little more serious. There are some things that I can do. And just showing up prepared is 90% of the battle.
Oh, so true. And I love that stories. It's one of those things actually happen that we make a massive change. And I call those gifts, right? When we don't show up unprepared, something in your life at that time changed it forever, and that you'll never show up unprepared today.
It didn't feel like a gift at the time, I can tell you, but now
it never does. Yeah. So you help people and agents scale to 6 figures, and they reach a level of success. A lot of the new agents, that's their first goal is like, let me see if I can actually hit 6 figures. Mm-hmm. How do you battle, or if you do or don't, with retention or people wanting to leave the team to go start things on their own? Do you guys battle with that at all?
Absolutely, we do. And that's kind of, it's like herein lies the rub with what we're doing. It's like we're working so hard to build these agents. And with the way that the splits work is you put in a lot of time and effort in the beginning for very little return, in the hopes that they become more self-sufficient and they start selling more. And then it ends up coming back to you in the end when the work isn't as hard. However, at that point is about the time that they're becoming self-sufficient enough that they feel like they can go out and do it on their own. So again, we've tried many different things over the years, and it was, holding on to them for dear life. But what we've realized in the last 12 to 18 months that has been super successful for us is to lean into it and just let them know from the beginning, like, hey, everybody's got different goals in this business. I'm going to show you exactly the value that we bring. And I think that it is worth a lot. But if you think that your goal is to go out and start your own team, if your goal is to go out and be an independent agent, to go start your own brokerage, whatever you want to do, let me help you with that. Let me show you the roadmap. Let me show you the playbook that I took to do what I do. And we'll build a business plan together. You're the one that has to do the work, but I'll build the business plan for you. And what I have found is that creates a stickiness that has never been there before. And when we really open up the books and show them what it costs to go out on your own, what the difference that they would have made actually is, if they had a different split, but maybe they were paying for their own signs, their own photos, their own marketing, their own transaction coordinators, everything else, they realize that the difference is minimal.
Mm-hmm.
I had one agent that said, "Oh, well, yeah, I would have made $10,000 more last year being out on my own, but hell, it wasn't worth the $10,000, right? I'd rather stay here with the camaraderie that we have, the culture that we have as a team, and just all of the support and knowing that that's right there."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can always go out on your own, but
I love that. Helping the agents understand that there's opportunities beyond what they're doing today. If they want to go build something, if they want to go have their own brokerage, you guys will help them within your world and go do it together. I love that.
Sure. Like I said, we'll open up the play. I am an open book as far as things like that go. I will show them exactly what everything costs, how it all works, and I will build the plan for them. I just need them to go out and work it.
Awesome. Now, you are an author, best-selling author of 4 books. I want to hear about those books and what inspired you to write your first book, and does it get easier as you write your 4th book? And I'm sure you've got some other books along the way that are coming out.
I will tell you that it does not get any easier. The writing the book was probably the easy part, and getting it published is the super easy part. But I went out. My first book, I was at a time in my life, I was in a corporate career and I was looking to make a change and looking to go out on my own. And I was following the big names, the Grant Cardones, the Gary V's, people like that. And they're all about big, massive action, which is phenomenal. I think it's great. But when Grant Cardone says, "Hey, if the mentor that you want to follow lives in Miami, Florida, and you live in, Bismarck, North Dakota, you sell everything you have and you go to Miami, Florida and tell them that you'll work for them for free for a year and learn everything you can. And then you go start and you build and you do whatever." Great advice. And I think it's fantastic for some people, but what about the guy in his early 30s who has 2 kids and a mortgage and can't just sell my house and move to Miami? So I realized that there had to be something in between, something small that I could do on a daily basis. And so I started experimenting. I'm really big on A/B testing. And so I started figuring out what are the little things I'm doing on a daily basis that are adding up to these big changes? What are these small incremental steps that I'm taking that are leading to these exponential gains? And so I just wrote a book that was just designed that over the course of 21 days, just one small thing that somebody can do, something that takes no more than 10 to 15 minutes that they can do each and every day. They get up, they read a chapter a day. The book is unbelievably easy to read. That the daily chapter can be read in anywhere from 90 seconds to 4 minutes. I mean, they're tiny. You could probably read the entire book in about 35 minutes if you really wanted to.
Oh, that's up our alley of our audience for sure.
But it was just, again, it was more therapeutic for me. It was a creative outlet. And it was also something that somebody told me I couldn't do when I just started barely kicking around the idea of publishing a book. I got laughed at, told that was stupid, that, I believe somebody used the words, "You're not Stephen King." Not trying to be, but I think that drove me. As you know, you're an entrepreneur. We're wired a little bit different, that if somebody tells us we can't do something, that's the first thing that we're going to go out and do. And so I gradually just did it quietly and silently. I didn't even tell my wife I was doing it until it was actually published. And I told her, I was like, "You remember that time that I talked about potentially writing a book?" And she said, "Oh, you're not back on that again, are you?" And then I flipped around the laptop and I said, "Well, here it is on Amazon." And then when that first sale came through of somebody that I didn't know, was pretty incredible. And then one day I'm looking at stats and I realized that I'm sitting on one of Amazon's bestseller lists, which they have 500 different bestseller lists. I think it's just to keep people putting content out there so that they can keep selling. But it felt really good to end up on one of those lists.
Well, congratulations on being a bestseller. Even though you may think that they have thousands, there's millions of people that publish books and very few still get on those bestseller lists. So congratulations.
Well, I appreciate that. And then book 2 was something very similar where it came out of necessity. I was big on journaling. And so I was buying all these different journals and realizing that there were little bits and pieces on each and every one that I really liked, but there wasn't anything that incorporated everything that I wanted. And it just hit me one day like, hey, dummy, you've published books before, just go create what you want. Write out a general outline, send it over to somebody on Fiverr who for $80 will format it for you, and just send it to Amazon and they'll print it and send you one. And so that's what I did.
I love that tip. Love that tip. So it has been incredible having you on the show. There's obviously one more question that I want to ask you when it comes to, because you were an investor.
Sure.
A lot of agents come into this business, or the agents that are listening to the show come into this business to do the big accolades, the big awards, the big, I want to sell as many homes as I can. But there's very few that actually invest. Like, what started your investing journey, and what advice would you give to those people that are a little bit nervous or scared in, not necessarily in the real estate space, but want to invest in real estate?
Well, actually, it's the third book that I wrote, because I got this question all the time, was all about how to invest in property if you've never done it before. And so I wrote this book and decided I would just put it out as just a free ebook. So anybody that wants to go to 10investormistakes.com, and it's the number 10, investormistakes.com, you can download that book for free. But basically what I did is I took the 10 mistakes that I made buying my first property, and I laid it all out because I didn't want people making the same mistakes that I did. And I was, again, very much an open book there, just said, here's exactly how our first deals were structured. Here's how they fell in our laps. Here's things that I wish I would have done differently. Here are some other deals, so that you've got some realistic expectations on what can be expected and what should be expected when you're out there looking for ROIs, when you're looking for business partners. All of that gets addressed through there. And so for me, you're asking the question of, what does somebody need to do if they're a little bit on the fence? Just try it. I mean, I realize it is a big risk, but with the way the market is right now, I probably shouldn't say that it's very difficult to lose money in real estate, because I know people that have, but find a partner who has done something before so that you can spread out some of the risk. Don't worry about spreading out the profit, because that's one of the things I hear is like, oh, well, I'd love to have a partner, but then I got to split the profits with them. Yeah, but you're also splitting the risk. You're splitting the work. You're splitting all these things. It goes back to what we talked about in the beginning of, they're doing the math. They're just doing the wrong math.
Yeah.
Don't think about it that way. And that has allowed me to scale. Having a partner has allowed me to scale significantly, and buying, right at 50 properties over the last 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even having a partner will also help you collapse time and gain the knowledge that you wouldn't have gotten if you did it on your own, and you actually minimize your risk. Like you said, not only do you share the risk, but you also minimize your risk of not knowing what to do. So definitely download Luke's book, 10 investment mistakes?
Investor mistakes.
Investormistakes.com.
Yep.
All right. So it's been awesome having you on the show. We always ask every single guest that comes on the show, what is one thing that you do to play bigger in business and in life?
I was asked this question yesterday, and it took me back to something that I read in Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He has something in there where he says, stop saying I can't afford it and start saying, how can I afford it? And I started doing that several years ago, and it started strictly financially. And it was with coaching and conferences and things like that. And it was like, it went from, well, I can't afford that, and even investment properties, to how can I afford that? And that has transitioned into over other areas of my life where I have, if nothing else, it has gotten me to think super creatively, to be able to find creative solutions to problems that I've got. And that's helped me get through some very difficult deals that I've had from a real estate perspective. It has helped me get through to some agents that I knew had a lot of potential, but we were struggling just getting on the same page. And so where in the past I would have just said, oh, you know what? I can't manage this person. I got to let them go, to how can I manage this person? How can I get through to this person? How can I lead this person? And it has led to some amazing relationships and experiences that I've had.
Oh, so good. Where can people connect with you?
LinkedIn is where I'm most active. I probably should be on Instagram, but sometimes I just feel old. Like I just don't get Instagram. I don't get it. But if you go to my website, lukeandrews.us, there's links there that you can follow me on LinkedIn. There's links to my books, things like that, courses, all that stuff. So
it was such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for being on the show. If you have enjoyed this interview with Luke Andrews, please connect with him on LinkedIn and send him a message on some of the key takeaways that you guys have learned by just listening to this episode. And don't forget to leave us a review. I appreciate your time, Luke.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.